Shalom Aleichem. We're studying the Zera Shimshon. This week's Parashat Eikev. We would like to do, with your permission, Drush number Zayin. A very interesting halachic drush that he has over here about Birkat HaMazon. Before we get there, just another reminder. We had the zchut to publish and write this amazing sefer. It's available for anyone who would like it. People are emailing and contacting us. It's very good. It's a very deep sefer about the stories of Masechet Gittin, a very deep and unusual and unique, I should say, analysis that you've never seen before that really touches upon many deep ideas throughout Torah. Please give us an email at my name, first name, last name @gmail.com, yosefzera@gmail.com, and I would love to arrange it for you. That is that. We also have a series of lectures that we're studying the book on the same channel, Biyachad. Look through it. We already did 2 chapters. We just recently started the 3rd chapter. If you want to get a taste of what it's about. Zera Shimshon, Parashat Eikev. Over here. Says the Zera Shimshon the following. He quotes the pasuk, famous pasuk that we say almost every day if you eat bread, that we say in the Birkat HaMazon is the source for the obligation to say Birkat HaMazon, the grace on meals, right? The special, one of the highest brachot that we have. It's the only brachot that we paskin that is considered deoraita from the Torah itself. It wasn't a rabbinic decree. Every other bracha was a rabbinic decree based on this mitzvah itself, based on this understanding how God wants us to say a bracha, to say a praise of Him and a recognition of Him before and after we do something. It's all learned from Birkat HaMazon. The Torah actually says to say Birkat HaMazon. All other brachot are decreed by the rabbis. There's a machloket regarding the bracha of that you say before you learn Torah, whether that's also from the Torah or not. But we paskin that it's also midrabanan. Says the Zera Shimshon, and you shall eat, and you shall be satiated, and then you shall bless. That's what it says in this week's Parashat, in Parashat Eikev. That's the source that God wants us to say Birkat HaMazon. He brings a Gemara Masechet Berachot, page 48b, that speaks about the laws of Birkat HaMazon. It says, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says the following. He takes the verse, right? What's the verse? That's really, okay, just a side point. Grammar is very important in Hebrew, because the language is the religion. And therefore, you have to know how to speak it right. So when you say it, it's not ve'achalta uverachta, right? It's not ve'achalta. Ve'achalta means and you ate past tense. And you ate past tense. The correct pronunciation is ve'achalta ve'savata uverachta, right? When you put the pronunciation on the taf at the end, the ta at the end, that's a command. Now God is telling you in the Torah, do it, right? You shall eat and then you shall bless. Not you ate and you blessed, right? And this formation of verbs in general comes out a lot in the Torah. Another place, a very famous place, is Shema Yisrael, Kriyat Shema, right? The very first word after Shema Yisrael is ve'ahavta et, right, etc. It's not ve'ahavta. That's a big mistake. Ve'ahavta means in past tense you used to love God. You used to, which means now you don't love Him anymore. Chas v'shalom. Right? It's supposed to be the other way. It's supposed to be ve'ahavta, which means and you shall love continuously and endlessly. You shall love God. That is how you're supposed to pronounce it. And that's not only on the ve'ahavta. It's on all the other similar formation verbs that appear there, right? Like v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam, not v'dibarta bam. V'dibarta bam means and you used to. In the past, you used to speak about Torah. No, it's v'dibarta bam, and you shall speak about Torah to your children endlessly. Side point, I'm very into grammar. That's one point. Here, Rabbi is making a drasha on the pasuk. He breaks it down. He says, Rabbi Omer, uverachta, when the verse says, uverachta, you shall bless God, zu birkat hazan. That hints to the first bracha that we have in Birkat HaMazon, which is hazanat hakol. V'chule. Al haaretz, when the verse continues and says, right, what's the whole verse? On the good land upon which God gave you. So al haaretz when it says on the good land, zo berakat haaretz, that's referring to the second beracha in Birkat Hamazon, right? Which is al haaretz v'hamazon. All connects. Hatova, the good land, the word good, zo, this hints, says Rabbi, Bonei Yerushalayim. And the third beracha in Birkat Hamazon, which is Bonei Yerushalayim. Hatova. Why? Because Yerushalayim is called Tov, and this is special also. Ahar Tov v'Lebanon. The good mountain, the Lebanon, the whitening mountain. Why whitening? Because that's where the Beit HaMikdash was, and that's where the sins get whitened, they get cleaned up when you bring korbanot over there. So Tov, good, is connected to Lebanon, which is connected to the temple, which is Yerushalayim. And that's how he connects it. That Tovah, good, means Yerushalayim. The blessing of Bnei Yerushalayim, the third one. Enli elala harab. So all this whole hint from this verse, says Rabbi, all I have is the hint that I have to say a baracha after I eat bread, right? Because Hamazon is after you finish eating bread. Lefanav minayin, from where do I know, however, that I have to say a baracha before, right? Which means the baracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Now this drasha of Rabbi seems to be suggesting that the baracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz is from the Torah. That's his opinion. It could be, however, it could be his opinion, but bottom line halakha is that we don't pass in that way, that all other barachot, including hamotzi lechem min haaretz, is from the rabbis, midrabanan. That's learned out in Masechet Barachot also in over there. Nevertheless, Rabbi in his world is trying to figure out from this verse, from this same verse, how do I know I have to say baracha before I eat bread? Talmud Lomar, the rabbis learn out, Asher Natan Lach, that the very end of that same verse says, Asher Natan Lach, which means that God gave you, on the land that God gave you. What does that teach you? Mish Natan Lach, means land that God gave you. How do you flip it and understand it? Once it was given to you, once what was given to you? Once the bread was given to you, which is when? Which process? Which point of the process? It's before you eat, right? The bread is given to you before you eat. Once the bread was given to you, that's the hint that before you eat, you also have to say a beracha, according to Rabbi. That is the language of the Gemara. Yesh makshim. Some ask the question, says Zera Shimshon. Amay mehapecha pasuk haseder. Why, according to Rabbi, how he understands the verse, why does the order of operations, why is it flipped in the verse? Right? Because according to Rabbi, the first part of the verse says, that's all talking about, right? That's all talking about the hints to each blessing in Birkat Hamazon. You say Birkat Hamazon after you eat. And then the end of the verse says, Asher natan lach, that I gave you, which hints to when it was given to you, which is before you eat, which is hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So according to Rebbe, first the verse hints at Birkat Hamazon, and then it hints at hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Logic should dictate that it should be the opposite way. Why does the Torah flip it according to Rebbe? That's the question. בתחילה, הווה למכתב ברכה שלפניה, ואחר כך של אחריה. Why does the Torah flip it? According to Rebbe's world. And you can say, he says, based on the following. It says in the Yerushalmi Gemara, the Chala. It says over there, Tanei, it was taught in the Braita over there, Matzah Gezula. Let's say you have matzah on Pesach that was stolen. Somebody stole matzah on Pesach, and now he wants to use it for the mitzvah, to eat matzah on Pesach. Why he would do that? Not for our concern. He did it. He wants to do it. He's, he's very desperate. He thought that was the right thing to do, even though it was wrong. And he stole some matzah. Now he wants to say bracha on the matzah. Alechat matzah, to fulfill his mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach. What happens? Asur levarech aleha. The Gemara says you're not allowed to say a blessing on it. Not allowed. Mishum. Why you're not allowed? Because it says, Botzea berech ni'etz Hashem. It's pasuk in Tehillim. It says the grabber, someone who grabbed, which means basically a thief, someone who stole something, and he blessed on it, it's actually a curse, chas v'shalom, to the Creator. It's not a blessing to him. If you're blessing God on stolen property, that's not what God wants. And that's not a blessing to God, it's the quite opposite. That's the source. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan says in the Gemara over there, Hada detema betchila aval basof mitzvah. He says at first, this only applies at first, which means this only applies to the first bracha. For example, on the matzah, if you're saying which blessing is the one not wanted? There's the one on stolen property. The first blessing, meaning before he eats it, alechat matzah, that's the bad one. But at the end, if he says, Birkat Hamazon, after he finishes the matzah, mitzvah, that's an actual mitzvah that he did. That's not considered a curse, chas v'shalom, and he fulfilled the mitzvah, according to Rabbi Yochanan. V'yifligu tu hatam, and the Gemara continues over there and argues. And then it comes down to actual poskim that actually ask this halachic question, you know. Magen Avraham brings down, right, the source for all this is in chapter Kuf Tzadi Vav in Orach Chaim Shulchan Aruch, that's chapter 196. The Magen Avraham says over there, Katav, so let me just preface with a little background. What happens is, in Torah we have laws of ownership. Who's considered an owner of an item, right? There's many different ways to own it. A certain physical act needs to be done on the item. So now what happens if somebody steals the item? If a thief steals the item, does he become the owner of that item? And this question matters because many other halachot will follow along with that, such as this one. Is the thief considered the owner, the legal halachic owner of an item once he steals it? So the simple answer is, just in a nutshell, that if the original owner never gave up hope that he might still get that item back, it doesn't become the thief's. It's not his. The thief doesn't get ownership of it. Unless the thief changes the essence of the item. If he changes the status and the essence of the item and makes it into something else, then he becomes the owner of it. So for example, if he steals strings, threads, he steals threads, and out of the thread he made tzitzit, or he made a shirt, it's a new item now. It's no longer called a thread, it's called something else. It's a shirt. It becomes his. He owns it. Same idea here. If he steals wheat from somebody, takes the wheat, goes through all the different processing steps of making bread, which is a lot, and he makes bread. Who owns the bread? He owns the bread. At that point, it becomes his. Now, it owes the money, the value of what he stole to the guy he stole from, the wheat. He still has to pay him for that. That's for sure. If he gets caught, he has to pay double, etc. However, when it comes to the bread now, it's his. So now look what Gaon says regarding this case of stolen bread. Katav, he wrote, somebody who stole wheat, or lechem, or if he stole even bread, ve'achala, and then he ate it. Okay? Says Avraham, he has to say Birkat HaMazon. Why? Because once he ate it, he has acquired it by changing the status of the item. How did he change the status of it? He digested it. It's gone. It's nutrients now in his bloodstream and in his muscles, and it's gone, right? And that's what you say Birkat HaMazon on the nutrition that you receive in your body. So that original item that he stole, the bread, is gone. It's changed. Therefore, he's become the item of the benefit of it, the nutrition. And therefore, he has to say Birkat HaMazon. But at first, when he couldn't say Hamutzi Lechem because it wasn't his, because that was the actual item that he stole. He stole the bread. He can't say Hamutzi Lechem on it. But once it's digested and he ate it, then it says it's changed status. He becomes the owner. He has to say Birkat HaMazon. V'damim hu chayav, and he still has to pay the money, of course, of the value that he stole. Nimtza ends up being shema she'achal hu shelo, that whatever he ate becomes his. Umekol sheken Birkat HaMazon deoraita ayan sham. And all the more so, since Birkat HaMazon is a blessing from the Torah itself, we want to be more strict, and therefore you should say it. Aval haBeit Yosef pasak de'en nevarech lo b'tchila v'lo b'sof. But the Beit Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, which is going to be the halacha for us, for Sfaradim, he rules in the Beit Yosef that absolutely not. That if it was stolen property, it doesn't say bracha, not in the beginning and not in the end. Not hamotzi, not Birkat HaMazon. On any item that's asur, any item that has a prohibition on it, if you ate it, it doesn't say any bracha and doesn't make any zimun on it. That's how the Shulchan Aruch paskins, and Seif Aleph in that chapter as well, and that's how it's going to be halacha l'maseh for us. Now, what's going to be for you should ask your Rav. But for Sfaradim, that is going to be the halacha. Nevertheless, Zera Shimshon, he wants to entertain the opinion of the Magen Avraham, and he wants to follow along and create a drasha off of it. It says over here, the Bach also, the Beit Chadash, Siman Eskalael, Dilabasov Chayav Levarech Ledivrei Akol, the Shinui Koneh. He holds that no matter what, you have to say Birkat HaMazon in this case, where the guy stole and he ate, he has to say Birkat HaMazon afterwards. V'damim hu chayav, and of course he has to pay the money nevertheless. Ve'eno afilu min ha'etz, and it's not considered a curse if he says Birkat HaMazon after. Umay de peligi b'Yerushalmi hu b'Mechar Rishona. And it says in the Gemara in Yerushalmi, that which was the source for all this, where they're only arguing about the first beracha, meaning the alechat matzah, not the after beracha. Come on, how the Bach understands it. The after beracha, everyone agrees you have to say. Ve'echet gazal matzah afuya mamash v'chule. Okay. Namtzinu limedim. We learn from this, says Zera Shimshon, that sometimes yesh beracha achona, af balo beracha rishona, kegon shegazal lechem, deva achilato k'niyah b'shinui v'chayav levarech. So Zera Shimshon is going with the Magen Avraham and the Bach here, that we find situations, right, in this situation where a person stole something, ate it, that the first bracha he doesn't have to say, but the after bracha, which is Birkat Hamazon, he does have to say, according to those poskim that he's following. Right? So that is the situation. And therefore, that's why the verse, he answers his original question. That's why the verse is written in that specific way in order to allow for this possibility. Why? If the verse was flipped back and it said Asher Natan Lach, that the hint to the first bracha, right? The hint to Hamotzi. If that was in the verse first, Meikara dehenu kshenatnan lecha az tiyeh chayav levarech. Haiti omer, then I would have thought דגם ברכה האחרונה אינה אלא דווקא היכא דמשלך אכלת, דהיינו שכבר נתחייבת בברכה ראשונה. I would have thought, right, that if, because again, our original question was that the hint to Birkat Hamazon comes first, and then the hint to Hamotzi comes second. If it was the opposite, where the hint to Hamotzi came first, I would have thought that only when you're able to say Hamotzi, which is which situation? When it's your bread, when it's allowed bread, permissible, when it's not stolen bread, that's when you say Hamotzi. Only then does this follow of Birkat Hamazon. Only when you could say Hamotzi properly and righteously, then you could say Birkat Hamazon. Right? I would have made that connection. But if a person stole, however, bread, and therefore he's not allowed to say Hamotzi, then I would think also that he is not allowed to say Birkat Hamazon, which would not be the halakha according to the Magen Avraham, which is Zera Shimshon is following. אבל היכד שגזל ולא נתחייב ברוכת השנה, אז מפני שהוא מנאץ, אז הווה אמינא דהיה פטור, like I just said. אף בברכה האחרונה, הוא כתבת בית יוסף, גנס כאלה אלב כדעת רבי הילה, וירושלמי וכולי, etc. Okay. משום הכי, that's why it says Shimshon, that's why it says it the other way, where first the verse hints at Birkat Hamazon and then it hints at Hamotzi Lech Min Haaretz second. Right? It says that first, which is the Birkat Hamazon hint, in order to teach us that a person has to say the after blessing, which is the Birkat Hamazon, even in certain situations in which he would not be chayab in the first beracha, which is Birkat Hamazon, which is Hamotzi Lech Min Haaretz, such as in the case where he stole, like we said. Why? Because then it's not called shenatan lach, that it was given to you, right? That's what the verse says. When it was given to you. Why? Because he stole it, therefore it's not given to him. Because, right, when shenatan lach means it was given to you, and if he steals it and eats when he's eating at the time when he stole it, that item is not his, it wasn't given to him yet, and therefore he cannot say the beracha on that. But the after beracha he could. So that is the reason why he says Rebbe learns the pasuk out that way. As a final point, again, that is the Zera Shimshon, and he's following the Magen Avraham, it seems like. And other Ashkenazi poskim, even the Mishnah Brura says that as a doubt, due to the doubt, you should say beracha achona in the situation where a person steals, and he should say beracha achona b'Birkat Hamazon after. But, like I said, for us, for Sfaradim, the Shulchan Aruch, the Beit Yosef, Rav Ovadia and his son, Rabbi Yosef Shlita, they all rule that we're going to say in this case, Safek Berachot La'akil, that no, we're not going to say Birkat Hamazon on stolen item, because that is how the Beit Yosef rules, and it gets a little bit more complicated as well, but bottom line, on an item that's asur, on any for prohibited non-kosher item or stolen item, the halakha is for us that a person would not say a before blessing or after blessing on it, unless, if you look at the Siv bit, if that item, if a person is in a life-or-death situation, is very sick, and he has to eat a non-kosher item, such as, I don't know, pig or whatever you want to think about, going milk with meat, in that case, says the beracha, it says the Shulchan Aruch, mevarachin alav, you would say a beracha on such a thing, because that is what he needs to save his life, and he's not doing it to be spiteful. And that's some, it's good to finish up with the halachot along with the drashot. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.